So yeah, thank you all for joining us today for this virtual webinar about community solar and the different options that residents have to take. And so today joining us, we have Thomas Tudor, a residential sales team manager at Revision Energy, as well as Mike Sweeney, a solar design specialist from Revision Energy, and Sam Kuharian, an energy advisor from EnergySage. So we've got a whole lineup of solar experts here to talk a little bit about more about community solar, and yeah, share the different options you have and answer any and all of your questions. So thank you for joining us, and I'm going to first pass it over to Sam from EnergySage.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. And yeah, thank you and Troy and Aaron for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk with you all about community solar and just kind of go through what the subscription, sort of service of that looks like. So yeah, let me present my slides here. Cool. You're all able to see that all right? Awesome. Yeah, and this is just a little QR code that goes to a landing page for EnergySage and City of Portland to connect you with your community solar options. I'll have it at the end of the presentation too, if you want to check that out at some point. Yeah, as Katie said, I'm an energy advisor with EnergySage. I think just a kind of a quick background about who we are, what we do in general here, and then getting into more about community solar and how we can maybe assist you guys with that. Um, Basically, EnergySage, we're an online platform and a marketplace. Our mission is to, as it says here, empower people to make better energy decisions, to get more educated, learn what their options are. Primarily, we did rooftop solar. So we have worked with installers in all 50 states to connect people with quotes for rooftop solar. But now we also do things like community solar and connect people with community solar projects, heat pumps as well, that sort of stuff. So yeah, just again, a little more background about, kind of where we've been. We've been active since 2012. We were started with some funding from different groups as well as the Department of Energy as part of their Sunshot Initiative. We're still backed by Department of Energy and other, climate groups and government organizations. And let's see. Yeah, so just a little more about, kind of the impact that solar can have here. Obviously we know going renewable is just good for the environment. Of course, I think that's why we're all here today. Want to decrease our carbon footprints. And a lot of people think the way to do that is, rooftop solar is kind of the most, obvious way to turn initially. And it is absolutely a great route to go, but it may not be an option for everyone. And I think what's really cool about community solar here is that you get the same carbon offset, ability that you do from rooftop solar with community solar. I mean, those are, it's all electricity that's going back into the grid. That's, reducing the amount of fossil fuels making up the total grid composition. Yeah, and you can just see the life cycle CO2 equivalent emissions here. Obviously, it's a really huge impact for solar. And I thought this is just another cool kind of way to display this information as well. Put it in a little more real world terms, what we're looking at, when, people are switching to solar, the over 12,000 trees planted, 103 cars off the road. That's a really measurable difference contribution that you're making by, switching over to renewable energy sources here, like community solar. Cool. Yeah, so community solar on a high level. Basically, what it is signing up to purchase credits from an existing solar farm. So, through our platform, you can get connected to these farms. But basically, what you're looking at is, you're probably seeing on the side of highway, solar farms. Those are connected to the grid, right? And they're sending electricity back into the grid, and they're getting credited for that. So for every kilowatt hour they send in, they may get a credit for it. Very similar to if you had solar on your roof, you would send that a lot of that electricity back to your utility and you would get credited for it on your electricity bill. For these solar farms that are sending the power back, though, they have these credits, but they're not going to get paid out in cash in them. So they're looking for customers that are interested in buying the credits, and that's where you would come in. So as a consumer, you would agree to pay for credits to cover your electricity bill from these solar farms. And in return, the solar farms are going to sell you those credits at a discount. So your credits will usually be discounted about 10 to 15%, which translates to about 10 to 15% overall, yearly savings on your electricity bill. Um, that can vary, depending on farms. There's also a lot of low to moderate income programs that can go as high as 25%. So, it's definitely important to check out what options are in your area. Uh, but I think, big picture important to know is that community solar doesn't change the way that you use your electricity. There's no installation of any additional equipment onto your home. It doesn't disrupt your power supply in any way. You'll continue to use your utility to get your electricity. This is just a billing service and a subscription. So it's a way to pay your electricity bill with these solar credits. Um, and what I really love about community solar as an alternative option here is that it's also very flexible. It's free to sign up for these programs. You just pay for the credits. Like we said, there's no installation, and you have freedom to cancel them at any time. So you're not locked into any kind of long-term contracts here. There's no cancellation fees or anything like that with community solar. Awesome. Yeah, so just some more of the benefits here. Obviously the environmental, we talked about lowering your carbon footprint and reducing, the amount of fossil fuels that are in the grid. And I think it's another great way to kind of vote with your dollars. When you're signing up for a community solar program, you're telling the market, hey, there's demand for this, and we want to see more community solar, making up our utility grids, and that's going to encourage investors and utilities to construct more of these community solar projects. Um, so, aside from, also saving you money and helping your carbon footprint, you're also, helping participate in movement to make the whole grid a bit greener here. But yeah, like we said, again, just the financial aspect too, always great to save some money on the electricity bills here. Yeah, so virtual net metering. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier about how your community solar farm would be giving you credits and figuring out how many credits to give you because it's based on how much electricity you're using. So, we've got this little graphic here, but essentially what we're doing is the community solar farm, right, making those credits. Those energy credits can be used against whatever you owe in your electricity bill. So you're signing up to purchase those credits and they're applying them to the bill for you. Usually how the process will work in terms of knowing how much electricity you use is that when you sign up to a project, they will get connected to your utility account. So the community solar farm will communicate with your utility provider to figure out how many kilowatt hours you've used historically. How many did you use in total last year? So they'll know how many credits to allocate you for the coming year. And a lot of these community solar farmers will also check in. They might do like an annual check-in to make sure that your electricity use hasn't, drastically changed, and they don't need to allocate you a different number of credits. Yeah, and just another graphic here again, kind of outlaying who are all the players in this relationship. I know just my role is I work with people who are interested in community solar rooftop, and sometimes getting all of these parts together can be a little hard to visualize at first. So just want to show where here's the grid. You can see community solar farm is feeding into the same grid that you're using in your home, which is why it's important that you get connected with a community solar farm that's active in your area that you qualify for. So it depends on who your utility is and where you're based as to what community solar farms you may be able to sign up to. But basically, it's all feeding into the same grid here. The utility is the same one that's working with the community solar farm is working with you. And our role as EnergySage is to be the kind of marketplace to help you, connect and view your options in the areas, and get you in touch with the community solar farm. So when it comes to the billing, right, of how you're actually paying your electricity bill and how you're paying the community solar farm, there's kind of two ways that it's done right now. I would say mostly here we see a lot of dual billing, but sometimes you'll see consolidated as well. I would say consolidated is probably the easiest to just kind of, visualize initially here, because it's very similar to the way that you're paying for electricity right now, right? It's one bill that you pay through the solar farm, and you pay for those credits as you're using them. So, if you, let's just say, used a 1,000 kilowatt hours, last year, the solar farms allocated you 1,000 kilowatt hours for your total year's production. So that's what they're going to give you, but you're only paying for those as you're using them monthly. So your monthly electricity bills, would be pretty similar, to the way that you're paying them now. That, hey, if I used AC in the summer and I'm seeing higher, summer bills than I am, in the winter, then, that will continue, and vice versa. The other method here is dual billing. So you get two bills, one from the solar farm and one from the utility. Um, your utility bill will show that the credits have been added onto it and will be deducted from your cost. So, your utility bill, may have some small remainder left over, but it's, you'll see that the credits are applied to your cost. So it's not that you're paying two bills, but you're really receiving those two bills, but you're primarily paying, again, the community solar farm. The difference here is that you're paying for the credits as they're generated, not as you're using them. So you can imagine, solar in general is going to be a lot more productive in the summer when we have a lot better, more intense sunlight, and a lot more daylight hours. So, if you had typically maybe you use electric heat, and your winter bills had been higher, but your summer bills had been lower. If you went over to community solar in this case, that would reverse. Your winter bills would be much lower because the solar production would be less, but your summer bills would be higher because that's when you'd be making more of your electricity. At the end of the day, though, you're still allocating the same amount of kilowatt hours. We use the example from before, 1,000 kilowatt hours, you're still allocating 1,000 kilowatt hours here. Your yearly bill would still be, 10, 15%, whatever the discount is from the farm less. So yeah, this is just a quick example of what options might look like on EnergySage. So if you go to our platform, you can just put in your zip code, and we'll pull up all the community solar farms on our network that work in your area. And you have an option to toggle between utilities if there are a couple different utility options in your area. So you can see what's out there, get more details, see what the different discounts look like, what kind of billing they offer as well. And if you're interested in moving forward at that point, then you can also get connected and start that process with the community solar farm. Something unique too that I think EnergySage offers that I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of if you are checking out your options would be getting in touch with your energy advisor. That's my role at the company here. So EnergySage is always a free service to use. We never charge, and the same goes through for our advising services. I'll often have multiple calls with people if they're kind of in the process of moving forward. So our information will be listed on the page when you're checking out your quotes. We'll probably also reach out with an email to you so you have our information. But if you have any questions, you can get in contact with us. We usually set up like 15 or 30-minute phone calls, just to make sure you feel more informed and kind of help with any questions throughout the process here. Awesome. And I think that just about brings me to the end. And yeah, there's just that QR code again if you wanted to check out the website. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. I think that was, yeah, a fantastic overview of subscription model community solar. And yeah, I'll follow up too with an email to everyone afterwards with your contact info. Same with Thomas and Mike. But fantastic. And if anybody has questions specifically for Sam, I don't see any in the chat. But we can also, yeah, answer questions at the end too.
Yeah, I'll just keep an eye on it as we're going here.
Perfect. Yeah, and welcome, Thomas and Mike. Thank you so much for joining us today from the revision perspective. And yeah, we'd love to learn a little bit more about the other option that folks have for community solar, which is ownership model.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Katie and Sam. That was great. Are you everybody seeing my presentation here? Awesome. So good morning. My name is Thomas. I grew up on an island in Maine where self-sufficiency was part of my childhood. I've been helping Mainers figure out the most practical options for kicking fossil fuel habits for over a decade now. And yeah, it's an exciting time we're in. The world is in the process of figuring out how to transition from a fossil fuel powered civilization to clean energy, and really a lot of awesome technology that is really cost effective and intelligent today. So we had a good look at subscription solar, and something that Revision has really pioneered. As far as I know, we're the only people offering ownership community solar in New England, and New Hampshire recently changed legislation so that we have the ability to build projects of the ownership type there as well. So this transition is really inevitable, but the faster we accomplish it, the more money we'll save, and the better we leave the planet for future generations. I feel like it's particularly poignant now for Maine after the winter storms that we had and sea level rise that we're seeing. I think we're, unfortunately only scratching the surface of the total costs of that kind of environmental change that we're living through. So I think it's never been more important to figure out what we can each do to reduce our carbon footprint and help be a part of the solution. So quickly, revision. We are mission driven to make life better by building our just and equitable electric future. We are proud to be 100% employee owned, and we got about 500 co-owners. Started up in the mid coast in Liberty, Maine, 21 years ago. And I joined Revision about 10 years ago. So I've been in the industry for a little while and excited at where we are today. This is just quickly background. We started in Maine, but we have expanded to New Hampshire and Massachusetts as well. And we've installed almost 20,000 projects now across New England, which are offsetting almost 100,000 pounds of carbon every single year and saving New Englanders over $40 million every year in electricity and energy savings. So there's my quick little background and revision, but let me get into ownership. Community solar. So I love ownership because it's inclusive while maximizing the long-term wealth creation for Mainers and keeping the positive economic ripple effects of clean energy investment in our state. So it's, as opposed to rooftop or, other on-site solar, this is for renters or condo owners, customers with shaded or obstructed roofs, planning to move in a few years. Maybe there's aesthetic objections to rooftop solar, or they require, structural upgrades or other things that make the roof more expensive or unviable. And then more and more, we're seeing homeowners, use the best part of their roof for rooftop solar. But once they fully electrify their heating and transportation, which we're helping people do with, heat pumps and heat pump water heaters and electric vehicle charging and battery storage, there's often the case that you need a little more than what you can produce on your roof to fully power your fully electrified life. And so more and more homeowners are doing their rooftop first, and then a CSF share to cover the rest of it. So as Sam said, community solar comes in these two forms. Subscription is super easy, and I think a great option and a great way to support solar. Great points by Sam. I think he really laid it out really well. Ownership is more similar to your own solar on your own property. So you still get the federal tax credit. You still have the same, really have the same economics as putting solar on your roof, but you instead own this portion of a large ground mounted system. So we can customize a solar farm share based on just an electric bill. We also want to think about, what other electrification you may be doing to properly size that share. You can add another share in the future to expand if necessary. And just as Sam talked about, this farm is sending this clean kilowatt hours into the grid, and you're receiving credits on your bill. You don't have a two bill situation like you do with subscription. And I'm glad Sam mentioned the seasonality portion, because I think that's confusing for a lot of subscription providers, where actually electric bills go up in the summer. With ownership, you have the exact same bill credit mechanism as on your roof. So you're directly receiving the kilowatt hours that your panels are producing. And so you can see this graph on the right is a recent example. The blue bars are the usage of this home, and the orange is the estimated solar generation of the solar farm share. And so what happens with net metering in Maine, which is a one-to-one system, let's say, well, what is it? It's August 1st today, isn't it? So let's say we're August here, and this home is using 975 kilowatt hours or something and producing almost 1,200 in this month. That extra, the difference between 975 and 1,200 would go onto this bill as credits. So all summer you start banking up credits with a solar farm share. And then as you get into the winter, you start working off those credits. And so if you size the share to produce the same amount of kilowatt hours annually as you use annually, then you just pay the minimum connection fee to CMP. If you, let's say you were 90% coverage, it would mean that you would cover your electric bill, but in the end of the winter, you would run out of credits, which is what happens at my house now. I have a rooftop solar array and I've fully electrified my house, so no fossil fuels. I did the last piece this summer and finally gave my gas-powered lawnmower away and got an electric one. So I'm all heat pumps and I have only drive electric now. So my home uses more electricity than I produce. And so when I get to January, I start having an electric bill through January, February until my solar starts producing more than I consume again. So same exact dynamic with an ownership model farm. The one thing that's different for ownership compared to rooftop is that you do have these membership costs for being part of this farm. There's a lease payment to the landowner, there's general liability insurance, and there's annual maintenance, mowing around the farm and doing an annual assessment to ensure that everything is working properly. So that's a little different than if you put panels on your own roof. But the electricity bill savings are similar to a very good solar roof because it's a sunny field. And if you're going to understand solar with one number, I like to think about it this way, which is that solar is really, and I mean ownership solar here, is really pre-buying your electricity for the next 25 years under warranty. We expect 35 plus years of useful life. So you've invested in this asset that's going to produce electricity for you for that time frame. And so you can add up the total costs that's going to that you have to invest, including the tax credit and incentives you receive, and you divide by the number of kilowatt hours that system will produce for you. And that's how you get a 25 or 35 year solar electricity rate of 10 or 12 cents per kilowatt hour compared to electricity from the grid today. And I actually forgot to update this. So CMP's rates are now about 21 cents a kilowatt hour, which I think I did. Oh no, this is still wrong too. So electricity rates have gone up a little bit. And that's kind of really the beauty of investing in your own energy supply, is that you have controlled your energy costs and know what they're going to be for the next 25 to 35 plus years. This is another way of thinking about that. If you were to pay for your solar farm share outright over the next 25 years, you're basically paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour for those clean kilowatt hours that your solar farm share is producing for you. You could finance the project and pay interest and pay a little bit more. It would actually be almost exactly what the utility rate is today, except this has gone up a little bit. So you can basically hold your electric bills flat, and if you want to think about it that way, by financing it, just trade your electric bill for your own loan payment, and then after that loan is paid off, you are saving more money than your neighbors who are still paying the utility, sort of renting electricity on a monthly basis. And, we expect electricity prices to go up over the next 25 years. The average in New England over the last 20 has been about a 3.7% annual increase in electricity costs. So my background's in economics, so I like to show a lot of graphs. This is sort of another way of thinking about the same thing and comparing to subscription here as well. If you have a sort of an average $145 a month electric bill and you do nothing different, you keep paying the standard offer supply to CMP, your budget for electricity for the next 25 years is somewhere around $40,000 if electricity prices do not go up. If they increase by 3% per year, then that budget you should have in mind should be about $60,000. Subscription helps you save, as Sam said, usually between 5 and 15%. But you're still tied to increasing electric rates. You just get a discount on whatever the rate is. So that's where, so your expected costs here for subscription would be somewhere in between a 10% reduction on current rates if you don't think electricity rates are going to go up anymore, which would be surprising. So really, your budget is more like this 53,000 with a subscription share. If you can invest in your own share, whether you need to take out a loan or not, you're definitely going to be better off over the long run. And then I think it's important to talk some about siting of these farms. There have been a lot of development of solar in Maine. We really want to use, less desirable land first. And solar siting is a really important part of the energy transition. It's also really helpful, for farmers to add resiliency to their farm and protect it from other development pressures and be able to pass on, the most productive farmland to the future generations, and use some of their less productive land for this asset that helps them maintain economic viability for the future of their farm. So we've been installing and maintaining solar projects for over 20 years and really care about making sure we keep all these projects running at maximum efficiency and that they're installed and maintained properly. So just one other sort of context here. I think this might be my last graph, but I think it's common right now and totally understandable that people see farms being built and maybe there's some trees being cleared or there's an awesome field that used to be there and now there's construction happening, and that's disturbing, especially for environmentalists and people who want to see the natural ecosystem. But I think it's really important when we think about solar construction that we, one, understand like the amount of land area that we need. In Maine, we're very fortunate to have, we're rich in land. So this shows the high density urban environment of Maine already developed is about 103 square kilometers. If we were just to cover our existing electricity usage today in our state with solar, I should say that this is a study that was done by Dr. Richard Perez, who's been an academic in this space for his entire career, really. He's got a whole model of solar that he developed about irradiation, the amount that strikes the planet. But anyway, he found that for Maine, our lowest cost clean energy grid would be about 55% solar, 40% wind, and still 5% natural gas, because battery storage is still relatively expensive. To get rid of that last 5% bumps up this cost significantly, but that's all sort of a tangent here. what I'm trying to say is to cover our current electric bills, we need this small dot of land area covered in solar. If we were to electrify all our transportation and heating, we need this slightly larger dot, which is about 40 square miles. I should mention that is if we don't put any more solar on rooftops and parking lots and parking garages and all the other projects that we're working on. Those sort of, whenever we're putting things on already developed land, that just is a nice co-use of this already urban environment. But it just, I think the takeaway here is, we are not talking about cutting down the forests of Maine to get to the clean energy future that we need. I also think it's important when we're thinking about solar development is that when you think about any other possible use of that land that is not its natural state, solar is really like the best neighbor that you could have. So it adds no strain to water, sewer, traffic infrastructure. There's no pollution, including light or noise pollution. And a fence or another buffer can be planted to block it from view if needed. And lastly, I think we got to remember, if we are opposed to seeing solar farms, we have that luxury because there are fossil fuel generating plants that are providing our electricity today, that are polluting other people's air and water and views. And, we've just sort of come to expect that in our current energy system, but we've got to be aware that, some siting of solar and wind is going to be necessary to clean up the planet for everybody. So I think that's just important as we all think about, obviously there's places where solar shouldn't be installed, and it's important to site it properly, but we also need to recognize the comparison there. So we have built, I think it's over 20 here, solar farms in the state to date, that are benefiting individual and businesses in electric bills in the state of Maine. And it's this economic opportunity for landowners and local farmers. And I really love the positive economic ripple effects for our local economy. I'm obviously employed by this industry, but all the money that we help people save, that's additional money that used to be going out of state for fossil fuel energy that is now in our local economies. So really important to think through those positive ripple effects. And I will leave it there for questions.
I think that was, another fantastic presentation. I think you both have drawn the parallels and differences between the both different options. Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, Mike, too, for being here. We do have one question in the Q&A, specifically about ownership model, I believe. So could you please explain what happens if someone who buys into an ownership model solar farm moves out of the state or dies? So I feel like that's, especially too, maybe if they move out of the utility jurisdiction.
Definitely. Yeah, you nailed it, Katie. If you move within CMP territory, then you bring your solar farm share with you, which is one of the benefits compared to having panels on your roof. If you're moving out of CMP territory, then you can include that share with your home sale and sell it alongside your home, or bequeath it to family or friends, or find your own buyer that way. You can also just let us know, if it's something sudden and you don't have time to do that and you just need to, pass on that share to the next buyer and find a buyer. We can help you do that. We've done that a handful of times already. And there's actually kind of a large demand in the market for those pre-owned solar farm shares, because retirees or other people who don't have a significant income tax liability, and so may take multiple years or may not have the ability to fully monetize that 30% tax credit. They could purchase a solar farm share that someone already has, monetize that tax credit, and they could buy it for sort of basically the net cost, the 70% of the project. So there's a strong demand for those just pre-owned solar farm shares.
So what happens, Sam, if you have a subscription model and you need to move outside of the CMP territory?
Yeah, definitely. So in that case, you would just contact the community solar provider and let them know that you no longer wish to continue service. So there's no you can cancel it at any time. They'll usually ask for, I would say, 30 to 60 days heads up for canceling. Part of that is that you're paying for the credits after they've been produced. So, if you cancel, you'd probably still have at least another month's bill because those credits have already been generated for you. But yeah, it's pretty easy to just stop the service at that point.
Cool.
So I have another question too. So, according to explanation, so I know one thing that people are really interested in. If you're interested in solar, you're often interested in the environmental element as well as the energy component. So, if someone has either a community solar subscription or an ownership model, can someone claim to be using renewable energy, or is it a different benefit? Why don't you start with? I'll start with Sam and then go to Thomas.
Sure. I mean, I don't know if anyone who is the ultimate, decider of that, but I would say yes. You're paying for that renewable energy that is going to the grid. And, if you installed your own solar panels, a lot of that would be going back to the grid. I mean, it's all in the same kind of pot, right? So I think it's very analogous to, either you have your own solar or you're buying a subscription or owning solar on a farm.
Yeah, good question, Troy. It gets into renewable energy certificates,
Right.
which is a confusing topic. I think of them as this sort of extra sort of golden ticket that you receive when you produce clean energy. And there is a market for those renewable energy certificates. It's a program to quantify and incentivize clean energy generation on the grid, because once those kilowatt hours are in the grid, you can't tell whether it came from a coal plant or it came from a solar farm. So there's this extra thing that you receive when you're sending clean energy into the grid. You can sell those renewable energy certificates, and generally they are sold. And that's part of the whole purpose of the program, is because you want to be incentivizing that clean energy and making it more valuable. And so there's a market for those certificates. I believe in both subscription and in ownership, those certificates are sold. And yeah, I think it's a much sort of larger conversation, but I think in my view, that's important to try to encourage and accelerate the adoption of clean energy, to make it as a powerful and economic opportunity as possible. But for people who don't want to sell any additional attribute of their farm, I mean, they're receiving the kilowatt hour credits. I think that's always important to separate the electrons from like the extra thing that you get. So you're always, producing and receiving the benefit of those clean kilowatt hours. But this extra little market that exists is something that if you have rooftop solar, you can opt to not sell those renewable energy certificates. But I think it's important that we keep that as this like extra thing, because in my mind, you are not paying, but if you buy RECs, you're not paying to build the whole farm. The people who are actually paying to build the farm and using that energy and those electrons are making the large investment. And the RECs is this sort of extra market that we have to try to incentivize clean energy on the grid.
Yeah. And I like to kind of think about it in terms of, you can't strictly say you're using renewable energy, but you're, like as you say, Thomas, you're creating an environment where people can invest in solar projects and renewable energy projects, and it kind of makes them possible. So you're absolutely helping advance clean energy and reduce carbon emissions on the grid, even if you aren't strictly speaking using, green electrons per se, because they all get mixed up in the grid through the, as it gets delivered to your home. So
Yeah.
that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't see any other questions in the chat or any hands raised. I will send out a follow-up email to all the people who registered, because there were quite a few. So if, yeah, I can include contacts for the 3 of you, that would be fantastic. I think this is going to be a fantastic resource for us, though, when we get questions about community solar. So yeah, I just really appreciate you taking the time today. This is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's fun being part of it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you all
absolutely.
for the work you do. Yeah. Cheers. Bye, everyone.